My name is Ryan, and I never imagined I'd be writing about this, let alone sharing it with the world. But something happened recently that cracked open a part of my life I thought I had buried for good. For years, I'd avoided talking about her, avoided thinking about the betrayal, the humiliation, and everything that came after. I thought I'd moved on, but 2 weeks ago, out of the blue, I received an email. The subject line read, "I'm sorry, Ryan." It was from my ex-wife, Amanda. Before I delve into the message itself, let me give you a little background. Amanda and I married in our late 20s. She was beautiful, outgoing, and had a spark that lit up every room she entered. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. For years, we were happy, or so I thought. We bought a house, started talking about kids, and built a life together. I trusted her completely. But then came the day that shattered everything. 15 years ago, I found out Amanda was having an affair. And not just any affair. She was involved with a married man named Greg. He was everything I wasn't. Older, wealthier, and charming in that manipulative kind of way. I discovered their affair in the worst way imaginable. A mutual friend called me one evening and asked if I was sitting down. I remember laughing it off, thinking it was just a random check-in. But then he dropped the bomb. "There's something you need to know about Amanda." He sent me a link to a private Facebook album that Greg's wife had created, exposing their affair to the world. There were pictures of Amanda and Greg at some beachside resort, pictures of them kissing, and screenshots of their messages. I felt like I was going to throw up. My hand shook so badly I could barely scroll through the images. I confronted Amanda that night. At first, she denied everything, claiming the pictures were photoshopped, that someone was out to ruin her reputation. But the evidence was undeniable. When she finally admitted the truth, her explanation gutted me even more. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. I fell for someone who made me feel alive. I didn't mean for it to happen, Ryan. It just did." Alive? What did that make me? Dead inside. The fallout was brutal. Amanda left me for Greg, and I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. Greg's wife divorced him, and the two of them became the town scandal. Everyone knew, friends, family, even coworkers whispered behind my back. I had to move to another state just to get away from it all. For 15 years, I rebuilt myself. I got a new job, made new friends, and even dated here and there. But deep down, I never fully trusted anyone again. Amanda's betrayal left a scar I didn't think would ever heal. And then her email arrived. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity before opening it. It was short and to the point, but it hit me like a freight train. "Ryan, I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from, but I need to apologize. I've thought about you every day for the past 15 years. I made a terrible mistake, and I've paid for it in ways you'll never know. Can we talk?" I didn't reply right away. Part of me wanted to delete it and pretend I'd never seen it, but another part of me, the part that had been quietly carrying this weight for over a decade, wanted answers. Why now? What did she want? Was this some kind of closure for her, or was she genuinely sorry? After 2 days of agonizing over it, I finally responded. "Why now, Amanda? What's changed after all these years?" Her reply came within minutes. "I need to see you. Please, Ryan, it's important." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. And let me tell you, I wasn't prepared for what she had to say. I agreed to meet Amanda at a small coffee shop in town, one of those quiet, tucked-away places where people go to work on their laptops or read a book in peace. It felt neutral, safe, I told myself. I'd hear her out, keep my emotions in check, and walk away unscathed. But deep down, I knew seeing her again would reopen wounds I'd spent years trying to heal. She arrived late, of course. Amanda always had a knack for making an entrance. When she walked in, it was like time had rewound 15 years. She looked almost the same, still beautiful, still with that confident aura about her. But when our eyes met, I saw something else in her, something I hadn't expected. She looked nervous, vulnerable even. That threw me off. "Ryan," she said softly as she sat down. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me." I nodded, keeping my face neutral. "You said it was important." For a moment, she just stared at me, like she didn't know where to begin. Then she took a deep breath and said, "I owe you an apology. A real one." I folded my arms and leaned back in my chair. "You had 15 years to apologize. Why now?" She flinched at my tone, but didn't look away. "Because I've spent those 15 years living with regret. I know I hurt you in ways I can't even begin to imagine. I was selfish, Ryan. I thought I was chasing happiness, but all I did was destroy lives. Yours, Greg's wife's, even my own. I wanted to laugh at the irony. So how's Greg? I asked, unable to hide the bitterness in my voice. Living the dream with the woman he ruined his marriage for? Amanda hesitated, and I saw her jaw tighten. Greg's dead, she said flatly. That caught me off guard. What? He passed away 5 years ago. Heart attack, she explained, her voice steady but her eyes betraying a flicker of pain. After everything fell apart, we tried to make it work, but it didn't. He went back to his old ways, lying, cheating. Turns out I wasn't special. I was just another notch on his belt. I didn't know what to say to that. A part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt hollow. This wasn't how I'd imagined their fairy tale ending, but I wasn't about to offer her sympathy, not yet. So, what do you want from me, Amanda? I asked. Why are you really here? She looked down at her coffee cup, fiddling with the sleeve. I want a chance to make things right, she said finally. Not with us. I know that's impossible. But with you. I want to explain myself. I want you to understand why I did what I did. I couldn't help but scoff. You think an explanation is going to erase what happened? You think I haven't spent years trying to understand it on my own? I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said quickly. I know I don't deserve that. I can't carry this guilt anymore without at least trying to make amends. I stared at her, trying to gauge if she was being sincere or just looking for some kind of absolution. Her words felt genuine, but after everything she'd put me through, how could I trust anything she said? Before I could respond, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. She slid it across the table toward me. This is for you, she said. It's something I've been holding on to for years. I hesitated, then picked up the envelope and opened it. Inside was a photograph, a picture of Amanda and me from our wedding day. She'd written something on the back in her neat handwriting. I made the worst mistake of my life. You were always the better man. I'm sorry. I stared at the photo, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't even begin to untangle. Anger, sadness, confusion, and something else, something I didn't want to admit might be hope. Not for a reconciliation, but for closure, for answers. I don't know if I can do this, I said quietly, placing the photo back in the envelope. Hearing you say sorry doesn't change what happened. It doesn't fix anything. I know, Amanda said, her voice breaking slightly. But there's more I need to tell you. Things you don't know. Things I should have told you a long time ago. Her words sent a chill down my spine. What else could she possibly have to say after all this time? What secrets could she still be hiding? I don't know if I'm ready for this, I admitted. I thought I'd buried all of this a long time ago. You deserve the truth, Ryan, she said firmly, even if it's hard to hear. I sighed, feeling the weight of the past pressing down on me. Against my better judgment, I nodded. Fine, tell me. What she said next left me completely stunned. Amanda leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly around her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, the way her lips parted and closed as if she wasn't sure how to begin. Whatever she was about to say, I knew it wasn't going to be easy to hear. There's something I never told you, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. Something I've been carrying with me all these years, and you need to know. I stayed silent, my heart pounding in my chest. The air between us felt heavy, charged with a tension I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just about Greg, she continued. I mean, yes, I made that choice to be with him, and I regret it more than you'll ever know. But there was more going on. Things you didn't know about. Things I didn't have the courage to tell you. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. What are you talking about? You had an affair, Amanda. You cheated on me, lied to me, and left me for another man. What else could there possibly be? She flinched at the harshness in my tone, but didn't back down. Ryan, I was pregnant. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the blood drain from my face as I tried to process what she'd just said. Pregnant. I repeated, my voice barely audible. You were pregnant? She nodded, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was Greg's. I found out just a few weeks before everything came out. I didn't know how to tell you, and I panicked. That's part of why I left the way I did. I sat back in my chair, the weight of her confession pressing down on me like 1,000 bricks. So you're telling me you were carrying his child while we were still married, and you didn't think I deserved to know? I didn't know how to tell you, she said, her voice cracking. I was scared. I knew I'd already hurt you, and I didn't want to make it worse. And then, when Greg's wife exposed everything, I felt like I didn't have a choice. I thought the best thing I could do was leave and let you move on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All these years, I'd thought I knew the full story, thought I'd come to terms with everything she'd done. But this was a whole new level of betrayal. What happened to the baby? I asked, my voice trembling. Amanda looked down at her coffee cup, unable to meet my eyes. I lost it, she said softly. A few months after Greg and I started living together. It was a miscarriage. I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out, to scream at her for keeping something so monumental from me. But another part of me felt an unexpected pang of sadness, not for her, but for the child who never had a chance. I don't even know what to say to you, I admitted, my hands gripping the edge of the table. You kept this from me for 15 years, Amanda. 15 years. Do you have any idea what that's done to me, to my ability to trust people, to move on? I know, she said, tears streaming down her face now. I know. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't even expect it. But I couldn't keep this to myself anymore. You deserve to know the truth, even if it's too late. I shook my head, trying to make sense of it all. Why now? I asked again. Why tell me this after all this time? What's changed? She hesitated, biting her lip as if she were holding back another confession. Because there's more, she said finally, and I need you to hear me out. My patience was wearing thin, but I nodded for her to continue. Go on, I said. What else haven't you told me? She took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she placed them on the table. Greg wasn't the only one, she admitted, her voice barely audible. There were others. Not during our marriage, but after. I spiraled, Ryan. After I lost the baby, after Greg started cheating on me. I didn't know who I was anymore. I lost everything. My dignity, my sense of self. And now, I'm trying to put the pieces back together. I stared at her, stunned into silence. This wasn't the Amanda I remembered. The woman sitting across from me was a shadow of the confident, vibrant person I'd once loved. But that didn't erase the damage she'd done. So what do you want from me? I asked, my voice cold. What's the point of all this? Do you expect me to feel sorry for you? To help you rebuild your life? No, she said quickly. I needed you to know the truth. And I needed to tell you that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I know I can't fix what I've broken, but I hope that maybe someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Forgiveness. That word felt foreign to me in this moment. Could I forgive her? Should I? And even if I could, what would that change? I glanced at the clock on the wall, suddenly feeling the weight of the conversation pressing down on me. I need to go, I said, standing up. I need time to process all of this. Amanda nodded, wiping her tears away. Take all the time you need, she said. And thank you for listening. I walked out of the coffee shop, my mind racing with everything she'd just told me. The revelations, the confessions, the guilt in her eyes. It was all too much to process. But as I stepped into the cool evening air, one question lingered in my mind. Why did she really reach out to me after all these years? Was it truly about closure, or was there something else she wasn't telling me? The days after my meeting with Amanda were a blur. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep, and every time I closed my eyes, her words replayed in my head. The confession about the pregnancy was hard enough to swallow, but the way she ended our conversation, the implication that there might be more, left a gnawing unease in the pit of my stomach. I told myself I wouldn't reach out to her again. I'd done my part. I'd listened, given her the chance to unburden herself, and now it was time to put it all behind me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a missing piece to the story, something she wasn't telling me. And then, 3 days later, she called. I stared at my phone as her name lit up the screen. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity got the better of me, and I answered. Ryan, she said, her voice shaky. Thank you for picking up. I wasn't sure if you would. What do you want, Amanda? I asked, trying to keep my tone even. Haven't you said everything you needed to say? I thought I had, she admitted. But there's one more thing, and it's big. I sighed, pinching the bridge of my nose. Bigger than the pregnancy, or the fact that Greg wasn't your happily ever after? Yes, she said quietly. I need to see you again. Please, Ryan, just one more time. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We arranged to meet at a park near my apartment, A place where we wouldn't have to sit across a table in awkward silence. I figured it would be easier to walk away if things got too heavy. When I arrived, Amanda was already there, sitting on a bench under a large oak tree. She looked different this time, less put together, more vulnerable. Her hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and she wore a simple sweater and jeans. It was a far cry from the polished, confident woman I remembered. I sat down beside her, keeping a cautious distance. "All right," I said. "What's this big revelation you couldn't tell me at the coffee shop?" She took a deep breath, her hands fidgeting in her lap. "Ryan, do you remember the last time we went on vacation together? That trip to Charleston, right before everything fell apart." I nodded, confused by the sudden change in topic. "Yeah, what about it?" She hesitated, biting her lip as if she were bracing herself for my reaction. "That trip wasn't what it seemed. I lied to you about why we went." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. "It was supposed to be a getaway, Amanda, a chance for us to reconnect." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "It was a cover. I planned the trip because Greg was supposed to meet us there. I wanted to see him, and I thought I could do it without you noticing." My stomach churned at her words. "You mean to tell me that entire trip, the dinners, the walks on the beach, the late-night talks, it was all just a smoke screen so you could sneak off with him?" "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I swear, Ryan, I never actually saw him. He canceled at the last minute. And I don't know, maybe it was guilt, but I ended up spending the trip with you instead." "Wow," I said, laughing bitterly. "You make it sound like I was your consolation prize." "It wasn't like that," she insisted. "I cared about you, Ryan, I did. But I was so caught up in my own selfishness, I couldn't see what I was doing to you, to us." I stood up, unable to sit still any longer. "You know, Amanda, every time I think I've heard the worst of it, you manage to surprise me. That trip was one of the last good memories I had of us, and now you've ruined that too." "I'm sorry," she said, standing up to face me. "I know I keep saying that, but it's the truth. I'm so sorry." I shook my head, unable to meet her gaze. "Is that it? Is that the big revelation you dragged me out here for? Because if it is, I think we're done here." "No," she said quickly, reaching out to grab my arm. "There's more." I pulled away, crossing my arms over my chest. "Then spit it out, Amanda. Stop dragging this out." She took a step back, her hands trembling. "After Greg and I split, I did some digging. I found out he had other affairs. One of them was with someone close to you." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "What do you mean, close to me? Who are you talking about?" She hesitated, her eyes filled with a mix of guilt and fear. "It was Jenna." I froze. Jenna was my younger sister, the one person who had stood by me through the worst of the divorce. The idea that she could have been involved with Greg, of all people, was almost too much to comprehend. "You're lying," I said, my voice shaking. "Why would you even say something like that?" "I'm not lying," she said, tears streaming down her face. I didn't want to believe it either, but I found emails, messages. "Ryan, I'm so sorry." I stumbled back, my mind racing. If what she was saying was true, it meant that Jenna had betrayed me just as much as Amanda had. The thought was unbearable. "I need to go," I said, turning away. "I can't deal with this right now." "Ryan, please," Amanda called after me. "I didn't tell you this to hurt you. I just thought you deserved to know." But I didn't respond. I walked away, my mind spinning with questions I didn't want to ask and answers I wasn't ready to hear. I don't remember much about the walk home from the park. Everything felt like a blur. Amanda's words echoed in my head, the anger boiling in my chest, and the nausea that came with the thought of my own sister betraying me. Jenna, how could she? She was my rock during the divorce, the one person who swore up and down that Amanda wasn't worth my time or pain. And now Amanda was telling me she'd been sleeping with Greg. It felt surreal. When I got home, I paced my apartment for what felt like hours. Should I call Jenna? Confront her? Ignore it and pretend Amanda was lying? But deep down, I knew Amanda wasn't making it up. She might have been selfish, but she wasn't cruel, not like this. If she'd gone out of her way to tell me, there had to be truth in it. I finally worked up the nerve to call Jenna. My hand shook as I dialed her number, and each ring felt like a countdown to something I wasn't ready to face. When she picked up, her voice was cheerful, completely oblivious to the storm brewing on my end. "Hey, Ryan, what's up?" she asked. I didn't bother with small talk. "Jenna," I said, my voice strained. "I need to ask you something, and I want the truth. No lies. Can you promise me that? There was a pause on the other end. Sure. What's going on? It's about Greg, I said. Amanda told me something today. She said you had an affair with him too. Dead silence. The kind that stretches so long it makes you doubt the world around you. My heart raced as I waited for her to respond. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was shaky. Ryan, I didn't want you to find out like this. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. So it's true. I asked, my voice rising. You slept with him? You, of all people, Jenna? After everything I went through? It wasn't like that, she said quickly, her voice trembling. I didn't know about you and Amanda at the time. He told me he was separated. I didn't find out the truth until later. And you didn't think to tell me? I demanded. Not even after the divorce. Not even after I spent years picking up the pieces of my life. I was ashamed, Ryan, she admitted. I knew how much he hurt you, and I didn't want you to hate me too. I didn't think it would help you to know. That's not your decision to make. I shouted, the anger boiling over. You were supposed to be on my side, Jenna. You were supposed to have my back. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know how to fix it. I thought it was better to just stay quiet and be there for you. Be there for me? I laughed bitterly. You were part of the reason my life fell apart. Do you have any idea what that's like, to know the two people you trusted most in the world betrayed you? I'm sorry, she repeated, but the words felt hollow. I couldn't take it anymore. I need space, Jenna. Don't call me, don't text me. I need time to figure out how to process this. Before she could respond, I hung up. My chest felt tight, and my mind was racing. It was one thing to lose a wife to infidelity. It was another to find out your own sister had been involved with the same man. I felt like I couldn't trust anyone anymore. For the next few days, I avoided everyone. I ignored Jenna's calls and texts, and I didn't respond to Amanda's follow-up messages either. I buried myself in work, hoping to distract myself from the pain, but it didn't help. Everywhere I turned, I was reminded of the betrayal. It was like an open wound that refused to heal. And then, a week after our conversation, Amanda reached out again. This time, she sent a long email. I didn't want to read it, but curiosity got the better of me. The subject line read, "There's one last thing you need to know." Reluctantly, I opened it. The email was long, almost painfully so, but one part stood out. Ryan, I know I've already told you more than you wanted to hear, but there's one more thing I can't keep to myself. When I was with Greg, he mentioned something about you. He said he didn't just target me because he was attracted to me. He wanted to hurt you. He never said why, but he had some kind of grudge against you. I thought you deserved to know. I reread those lines over and over, trying to make sense of them. A grudge? What kind of grudge? Greg and I had barely interacted before everything happened. He was just Amanda's boss, someone I'd met a handful of times at work events. Why would he have a vendetta against me? The email raised more questions than answers. What was Greg's real motive? And how deep did this rabbit hole go? For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt since the divorce. The need to dig deeper, to uncover the full truth, no matter how painful it might be. I didn't know where this journey would lead, but one thing was clear. I couldn't let it end here, not without knowing why Greg had set out to destroy my life. Amanda's email haunted me for days. I couldn't stop thinking about Greg's supposed grudge against me. Why would a man I barely knew, someone who should have had no reason to care about my existence, go out of his way to destroy my life? It didn't add up. And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. Finally, I decided I couldn't leave this alone. I needed answers, no matter how painful they might be. So I did something I swore I'd never do. I called Amanda. She picked up on the first ring, almost as if she'd been expecting my call. "Ryan," she said, her voice soft, almost cautious. "I wasn't sure I'd hear from you again." "Don't get the wrong idea," I said curtly. "I'm not calling because I forgive you or because I want to reconcile. I just need more information." "I understand," she said quickly. "What do you need to know?" "Greg's grudge against me," I said. "You said he told you he wanted to hurt me. Did he ever say why?" She hesitated, and I could hear her take a deep breath on the other end of the line. "Not exactly," she admitted. "But there were things he said, little comments here and there, that made me think it was personal." "Like what?" I pressed. "Well, for starters, he knew more about you than I ever told him," she said. "He knew where you worked, what kind of car you drove, even little details about our relationship. At first, I thought he was just being nosy. But then he said something that stuck with me. What did he say? I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. He said, "It's funny how life comes full circle. People like Ryan always get what's coming to them." I didn't know what he meant at the time, but now, I don't know, Ryan. Maybe there was something from your past that he was holding on to. My past? That didn't make sense. I'd never had any significant interaction with Greg before he and Amanda got together. As far as I knew, he was just Amanda's boss, a smug, arrogant jerk, sure, but not someone I'd ever wronged. Or so I thought. After I hung up with Amanda, I decided to do some digging. I started with Greg's background, using every tool I could think of: social media, public records, even some old contacts from Amanda's workplace. What I found only deepened the mystery. Greg had grown up in the same city I did, attended the same high school, and graduated just a year ahead of me. It was a connection I hadn't realized before, but it didn't explain why he'd hold a grudge against me. I didn't remember him from high school at all, and as far as I knew, we'd never crossed paths. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something there, something I wasn't seeing. So I decided to take a more direct approach. I reached out to one of my old high school friends, Dave, who had always been good at remembering people and details. "Hey, Dave," I said when he picked up. "This might sound weird, but do you remember a guy named Greg Walters from high school? He graduated a year before us." "Greg Walters?" Dave repeated, his tone thoughtful. "Yeah, I remember him." "Why?" "I think he had some kind of issue with me," I said, "but I can't figure out why. Do you remember anything about him? Did we ever have any kind of run-in or conflict?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Dave finally spoke. "Ryan, you don't remember, do you?" "Remember what?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Greg had a younger brother," Dave said. "His name was Matt. He was in our grade." The name hit me like a ton of bricks. Matt Walters. The quiet kid with glasses who always sat in the back of the classroom. The kid who barely spoke, but always seemed to be watching. The kid who, one day during our junior year, had a complete breakdown after being bullied relentlessly by a group of guys in our class. I wasn't one of the bullies, but I remembered the incident vividly. The ringleader of the group had been a guy named Eric, and I'd laughed along with everyone else as Matt was humiliated in front of the entire cafeteria. At the time, it hadn't seemed like a big deal. I wasn't the one doing the bullying, after all. But now, looking back, I realized my laughter had made me complicit. "Matt Walters," I said slowly. "I remember him." "Well, you should," Dave said. "Because Greg blamed you for what happened to him." "What?" I said, my heart sinking. "Why would he blame me? I wasn't even part of it." "Maybe not directly," Dave said. "But you didn't stop it either. And Matt, he didn't exactly recover from it. He dropped out of school a few months later, and last I heard, he'd gotten into some serious trouble, drugs, jail time, you name it. Greg always held a grudge against the people he thought were responsible for Matt's downfall. I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. All these years, I'd thought Greg's affair with Amanda was just a random act of infidelity. But now I realized it was something much darker. It wasn't just about Amanda, it was about revenge. Revenge for something I didn't even realize I'd done. After I hung up with Dave, I sat in silence, trying to process everything I'd just learned. Greg had targeted Amanda, manipulated her, and destroyed our marriage, not because he loved her, but because he wanted to punish me. And the worst part? I couldn't even say he was entirely wrong. I had laughed at Matt's humiliation. I hadn't stood up for him when I could have. And now, all these years later, I was paying the price. But even with this new understanding, one question remained. Why had Amanda reached out to me now? What was she hoping to achieve? And was there more to this story than I'd uncovered so far? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't walk away from this. Not yet. After learning about Greg's grudge and the connection to his brother, Matt, my mind was racing with guilt and confusion. Memories of high school, ones I had buried and dismissed, began resurfacing. I didn't torment Matt, but I also didn't stop it, and now that failure to act had come back to haunt me in the most twisted way. I couldn't shake the feeling that Amanda knew more than she was letting on. She had been Greg's partner during all of this. She must have known the lengths he was willing to go to destroy me. Her emails and confessions weren't enough anymore. I needed the full story, and I needed it now. That night, I called Amanda again. She picked up after a few rings, her voice hesitant. "Ryan, I need you to stop dancing around the truth," I said bluntly. "You knew Greg had a personal vendetta against me. You knew." And you stayed with him anyway. What else aren't you telling me? There was a long pause before she sighed. I didn't know everything, Ryan, not at first. He told me bits and pieces about his brother, about what happened in high school, but he never gave me the full picture. I swear, I didn't realize how deep his hatred for you ran until it was too late. Too late for what? I pressed. Too late to stop him, she admitted. Ryan, Greg didn't just want to ruin your marriage. He wanted to ruin your life. He used me as part of his plan, but he had other things in motion, things I didn't know about until after we split. What kind of things? My voice was tight with anger and apprehension. He reached out to people from your past, she said. Old colleagues, friends, even exes. He wanted to dig up dirt on you. Anything he could use to hurt your reputation. I think he might have even sabotaged your job after the divorce. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. My job? Yes, she said quietly. He bragged about it once. Said he'd made sure you wouldn't have an easy time bouncing back. I didn't want to believe him, but knowing Greg, it's possible. I was furious. All those years of struggling after the divorce, trying to rebuild my career, thinking it was just bad luck. Was Greg behind it all? The thought made my stomach turn. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? I demanded. Why wait 15 years to come clean? Because I was scared, she said. I didn't want to admit how complicit I was. And honestly, I didn't think you'd ever want to hear from me again. But now, I can't keep it to myself anymore. You deserve to know. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to scream at her, to unleash all the anger and frustration I'd been holding on to, but another part of me was too exhausted to fight. I just wanted the nightmare to end. Is that everything? I asked finally. Is there anything else you've been hiding from me? There's one more thing, she said hesitantly. But I need to tell you in person. I clenched my jaw, my patience wearing thin. Amanda, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Please, she said. Just one more meeting. After that, I'll leave you alone, I promise. I reluctantly agreed, though I had no idea how much more I could take. Whatever she had left to say, I just hoped it would bring me some closure. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that this wasn't over yet. Amanda and I agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where this nightmare had first reignited. I walked in feeling numb, my mind bracing for yet another bombshell. She was already there, sitting in the corner, clutching a folder in her hands. Her face looked pale, almost haunted, and for a brief moment, I wondered if she regretted dragging me back into this mess. I sat down without saying a word, my eyes fixed on the folder. What is it this time? I asked, my voice cold. Amanda took a deep breath, her hands trembling as she slid the folder across the table to me. This is everything, she said. It's all I have left. I hesitated, then opened the folder. Inside were documents, emails, and even handwritten notes. The first thing that caught my eye was a printed email thread between Greg and another person, someone I recognized immediately, my former boss. My stomach twisted as I read the exchange. In the emails, Greg had fed my boss lies about me. Accusations of incompetence, rumors about workplace behavior, even fake claims that I was stealing from the company. My boss had clearly taken the bait, responding with comments like, "Thanks for bringing this to my attention. We'll handle it internally." That's why I got fired. I muttered, my voice shaking with anger. I thought I'd made a mistake, that I'd screwed up somehow, but it was him. Amanda nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I didn't know he'd gone that far until after we split. He kept it all hidden from me. I found these emails on his computer after he died. I kept flipping through the documents, each page unraveling more of Greg's calculated scheme. There were records of payments to private investigators, copies of messages he'd sent to old friends of mine, and even correspondence with Jenna. That last part stopped me cold. He was in contact with Jenna? I asked, my voice sharp. Amanda nodded. She didn't know what he was really doing, Ryan. He told her he wanted to get in touch with you, to smooth things over. She had no idea he was using her to get information about your life. I clenched my fists, the anger bubbling up again. So he used everyone around me? My wife, my sister, my boss, all to ruin me? Why? Because I laughed at something in high school? Because I didn't stand up for his brother? It wasn't just about Matt, Amanda said quietly. It was about power. Greg was the kind of man who thrived on control. He saw you as a challenge, someone he could break to prove his dominance. It wasn't rational, but that's who he was. I leaned back in my chair, my mind racing. Everything I'd endured, my divorce, my career falling apart, my strained relationships, had been orchestrated by a man I barely knew. And the worst part? I'd let it happen. By staying silent all those years ago, by not standing up for Matt, I'd planted the seed for Greg's revenge. I don't know what you expect me to do with all of this, I said finally, gesturing to the folder. It's not like I can go back and change anything. I don't expect anything, Amanda said. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. After everything Greg did to you, you have the right to see the full picture. I stared at her, trying to read her expression. For once, she looked sincere. There was no smugness, no attempt to manipulate me, just a broken woman trying to make amends for her part in the chaos. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, I said, or Jenna, or anyone who played a role in this. But I appreciate you telling me the truth. At least now I know. Amanda nodded, wiping away a tear. I'm sorry, Ryan. For everything. With that, I stood up, taking the folder with me. I didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. I just walked out of the coffee shop and into the crisp evening air, feeling a strange mix of relief and emptiness. For the first time in years, I felt like I could start moving forward. The truth hurt, but it was better than living in the dark. Greg might have succeeded in tearing my life apart, but he hadn't destroyed me. I was still here, still standing, and I wasn't going to let his actions define the rest of my life. As I walked home, I thought about Matt, the boy I'd failed to protect, the boy whose pain had set this chain of events in motion. Maybe I couldn't change the past, but I could learn from it. I could be better. And maybe, just maybe, I could finally find peace.